the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. At this time, I'd like to, I'll entertain a motion to approve the minutes of the April 16th meeting, which everyone, I think, received in their packets.
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you. Are there any corrections, additions, deletions? Okay, hearing none, I'll entertain a motion to, well, we'll call the vote on that. All in favor of approving the minutes as submitted, say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Thank you. The minutes are approved as submitted. Before I go any further, a couple of announcements. 4 of our members were unable to be with us this evening, and their absences will be recorded as excused since they told us in advance. In addition, Alexa Lee, our Radnor High School Board of Health intern, is in the midst of preparing for finals at the high school and is unable to be with us this evening. So I would like to ask if there's a volunteer to take notes for the meeting.
I could take notes.
Dr. Saldivar, thank you very much. Appreciate that. At this time, let me ask Mr. Taltone to provide us with the health officer's report.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Good afternoon, board members, and Mr. Kane and Mr. Nagel. During the month of April 2012, I was able to do 30 food safety inspections, 7 bathing places. We had 5 citizen quality of life issues and attended 1 workplace safety committee. We had a couple of temporary events which went off very well. One was the St. Martin's Church, which was April the 28th, and the other was the Katie Sampson lacrosse tournament, which was held at the high school, which was also very successful. In addition to that, I wanted to bring your attention to that on that same day, Delaware County Intercommunity Health Coordination, along with several Delaware County municipal governments, including Radnor Township, took part in the National Take Back Day. This is, I think it's the 2nd one. On that day, we took in Radnor Township 101 pounds of drugs that needed to be disposed of. So I thought that was pretty good. For up and coming events, June the 2nd, which is next Saturday, will be I think it's the 12th annual Mainline Jazz and Food Festival, which will be located on North Wayne Avenue between Lancaster Avenue and West Avenue. And the time is from noon to 9. You do not want to miss it. It's a nice affair. About 2 years ago, we've been talking about placing food safety inspections on the website. The state sort of takes the time when they do what they do as far as promulgating the rules. So in that regard, I've talked to Bob McLean from the Department of Agriculture, and I talked to my supervisor, Kevin Kachansky. And what we're looking at is when we do food safety inspections here in Radnor Township, placing them on the township website. I think it's important that residents know the quality of the restaurants, how they're keeping them in this township. So my supervisor has talked to the manager, and it's my hope that we'll be moving forward with that within the next several months, placing them current where a resident or a visitor can come in and they say, looks like a nice place, or I wonder what it's like. And they can go on our website and get that information. So we're moving forward in that regard. Also in your packet, you'll find the minutes which we just moved on, minutes of the Environmental Advisory Board About 3 weeks ago, in Radnor Township, we had a situation where there was a rabid fox along the 400 blocks of East Lancaster Avenue. That fox tested positive for rabies. In that regard, someone reached out to us, Dr. Russell, Harold Russell, and so I can find this file. Peter Costa, he's a master of public health from the public health group. And what they've offered to do is come to Radnor Township and do a seminar on rabies awareness, prevention, and control. It's going to be a free seminar. It's going to be here in this room. We're inviting health officials, police officers, animal control officers from various entities and governmental agencies in Delaware County. We've already reached out to them by way of invitation, and we're hoping that we have a good turnout. We're going to tape it, and we're going to show it to our residents as a public information.
Larry, do you want to just announce the date and time of that?
Yeah, that's going to be June the 12th, 2012, from 10 a.m. to 12 noon. Thank you very much for reminding me of that. Thank you. Also in your packet, you'll see some information from the Delaware Riverkeeper Network Communication. There is a communication regarding the resolution from this Board of Health regarding herbicide Roundup. There's a similar one from the Environmental Advisory Council on the same issue. And also there's a draft whitetail deer management plan for Radnor Township. Mr. Chairman, Board, so ends my report.
Thank you. Are there any questions for Mr. Taltone? Hearing none, we'll move on. But before we do, with regard to the comments from the river keepers, is there anything that you can share with us and with anyone watching this meeting on television in the nature of their comments?
The packet was fairly large, to be honest with you, and I didn't get a chance to read through it enough to comment.
Okay, thank you. And again, the Environmental Advisory Council submitted a resolution consonant with ours, which we had forwarded to the Township Commissioners. And speaking of which, Mr. Fisher is unable to be with us this evening, but we're grateful to have Mr. John Nagel of the Board of Commissioners with us tonight. Thank you, Mr. Nagel.
I just wanted to comment on one thing, which is that one of the things that happened with the rabid fox was that a person had handled it, and that they had to, there were some, and there were announcements on the radio from a nurse from the Delaware County branch of the State Health Department and other efforts that finally did succeed in locating this person when he was evaluated to see if he needed rabies prophylaxis. So, it's, I just want to sort of remind anybody watching this that, rabies is around, and, you need to follow the township rules and regulations about keeping your animals on a leash or keeping them in your yard, because, and keeping their, rabies vaccination up to date.
Any other comments, questions? Thank you. We'll move on to old business. The first item is teen health issues. Last week on May 16th, Alexa Lee and I met with Dr. Grobin, the school district superintendent, and Mr. Kevin Kane, who is assistant superintendent and is the liaison from the school district to this board. We met and discussed the program we've been talking about through the last several months, and Ms. Lee showed the posters that she has developed, the poster that she has developed, and my general impression, and Mr. Kane can jump in and add anything to that, is that the school district is supportive of that effort. And in fact, it turns out that they have a copy machine that can make posters. And so we're going to take advantage of their offer and utilize that facility. And as well, we will utilize the school district system of e-minders to put out information on that through the high school as well as the middle school. Dr. Grobman's opinion was that the material might be over the heads of elementary school students, so we might want to next time around consider a different approach for elementary school children. Dr. Grobman also suggested something which I think we may be following up on, and that is have Alexa Lee interviewed by a gentleman named Michael Petiti, who is, I think, Director of Communications. I may have his title off a bit, but that's his role with the school district, and that interview might appear in the high school newspaper as well as on our respective cable TV stations. Dr. Grobman also suggested, and I think we should follow up on this, that we get in touch with Sam Strike and get something on Radnor Patch about this. So that's something that we'll follow up on and talk about some more. And that, Mr. Kane, do you have anything to add to that?
Just that although I appreciate the job promotion, I'm the Director of Student Services, not the Assistant Superintendent. But certainly the district is willing to utilize, the resources we have to be able to get that information out. And I think we spoke of doing it, providing Alexa Lee some time to prepare for her finals and get through the end of the year, and that we would work on it shortly thereafter.
That's correct, and thank you for that. We're targeting early fall or probably in September for the distribution of the posters, and which we hope will be put up in the middle school and the high school, as well as this building and perhaps the Radnor Memorial Library, where a lot of kids go and do work. So are there any questions or comments about that?
I guess I'm not familiar with what Radnor Patch is. What is Radnor Patch?
Well, I'm probably going to botch this description, but my understanding is it's an online news outlet that Sam Strike, who used to be a reporter for the suburban newspaper, she has set up, and it's growing in terms of its importance to our community. A lot of organizations seem to utilize that outlet to get news out. So,
Herb, if I might add, that whole model is considered hyper-local. So the idea is there's a Radnor Patch, and then there's a Bryn Mawr. That's part of Lower Merion. I think Lower Merion actually has 2 different patch outlets. So they also have they'll send you emails for notices and things like that.
Because, maybe it's also a good opportunity to raise this issue to the Wayne Suburban, or, here's a student project, and, she took something that was, it's been a big success in New York City and adapted it for our local area, so it's kind of a good opportunity to raise the issue. The Institute of Medicine came out with a national report about obesity about, I don't know, maybe 2 or 3 weeks ago, and among their top recommendations, one was that schools should be the very center of national efforts on obesity prevention and treatment. And that one of the things that schools should do is to make sure that every student has 60 minutes a day of active, where they're active physically. So all grades, all students, which we certainly in Radnor do not meet that criteria. So so I think this could be a nice opportunity to maybe combine it with, if the reporter were educated about this Institute of Medicine report, since this is a sort of preeminent national body advising this, it could be a good opening to, raise the issue in our community.
How would you say, well, Alan Thomas is the reporter whose name comes to mind. He covers the township and the school district fairly extensively. How would you suggest we go about getting this information to him?
Well, there's an executive summary of the IOM report, which, has these basic points, and maybe, however the appropriate way, I'd be happy to do whatever, whether, I don't want, whatever's the appropriate way to do, I'm happy to do
Okay.
it.
Why don't we try doing it this way? If you could get me the executive summary, and I'll contact Alan Thomas, whom I know, and from the time when my daughter was an intern with the paper, and worked under his mentorship, as well as Sam Strikes. So I will follow up, be happy to follow up on that. Any other questions or comments about that item on the agenda? So again, we're going to be moving forward with that along the lines we've talked about, and target sometime in September for the distribution of the posters to those sites. The next item is Lyme disease, and the only thing I want to say about that is that last month, Doctors Donato and Foreman participated with me in what I thought was a very good 31.5-minute program on Lyme disease. I think we covered it rather thoroughly, and it is available on the township's website. And Mr. Taltone, just so I don't confuse that with email addresses, would you remind our listeners and viewers what that website is?
The Radnor Township website is www.radnor.com.
Thank you. Any questions or comments about that? Again, it was a good program and worthwhile viewing, quite informational. Next item is the deer management. We do have a rather lengthy report that was forwarded to us by Mr. Taltone as part of our meeting packets. Unfortunately, Dr. Donato is not with us, and he was going to at least go over some of the aspects of this report with us this evening. So my preference would be to defer any further discussion until Dr. Donato can be with us, so that he can lead us through that. If there's no contrary opinion, then we'll go with that plan. The Alliance for Safe Kids, or ASK, as I think I reported at our last meeting, and if I didn't, I'll do it now, had a very good spring program on safe and successful transitions of high school seniors to college. That is also available on the township's website for viewing, and I thought that was a very, very good program as well. And I would recommend it to parents of juniors as well as seniors, especially the latter before their kids go off to college. So a lot of good information. There were speakers from from the University of Pennsylvania, from Villanova, from Penn State, and from Westchester, I believe. People who work at those schools and whose jobs encompass helping kids make those transitions. So they had a lot of good ideas. At the same time, the Alliance for Safe Kids is looking for good topics for the fall presentation. They do 2 a year, one in the fall and one in the spring. And perhaps if we can all think of those kinds of things and come to the June meeting with some ideas, which I can pass along to the Alliance, that would be a good thing for us to do. Okay. The REACH program, Amy, you're the...
I have nothing new to say about, there hasn't been any contact for last month from them.
And Ms. Doyle is not here to report on the Environmental Advisory Council meeting. Nevertheless, as Mr. Taltone pointed out earlier, we do have their rather extensive minutes from one of their recent meetings, so we can all look at that and bring ourselves up to date as to what they are doing. Any further old business? Okay, hearing none, I'll ask for, is there any new business?
I just wanted to see, for our intern for next year, is that going to be Alexa Lee still, or do we need to recruit a new one, or?
Well, that's a good question. I've talked with, I've discussed this with Amy Leader via email, and Dr. Leader is a member of this board and is our lead person in mentoring the intern and working with the high school to recruit interns. And our feeling, mine as well as Dr. Leader's, is that we have, over the past 2 years that we've had the internship, limited it to 1 year. My preference would be to continue that and get a new intern. And today I emailed the principal and assistant principal at the high school with copies to Dr. Groveman and to Mr. Kane with a request to provide some input as to how we can do that in a more developed way, bearing in mind that Alexa Lee was actually recruited by the previous year's intern, Allison Mosher Mills. And it seems to me there is a more systematic way of doing that that might yield us a bigger recruiting field. So what I've suggested is that we try to look for students at the high school who are interested in public health, health education, and or science in any way. But certainly there are other areas we might explore. Is that it?
I mean, I like the idea of it being a 1-year internship, and so we give people the opportunity to do it, so.
That said, given the fact that Alexa's project will not bear fruit until September, there will be some overlap. But we will, in the next couple of months, be actively recruiting for next year's intern. Any other new business items? Doesn't look as though we have any public participation. So unless there is any other reason not to do so, we'll adjourn the meeting at this time. Thank you all for coming, and I look forward to seeing you at our June meeting, which is June
June the 18th.
June the 18th at 5 o'clock in this room. Thank you. Of course, it's